Good afternoon to everybody. I'm Mike Haggerty, and I'm alongside with Mike Clayton. Special guest today, Hardell Moore, for our Heads Up podcast. And if you're wondering, this is not a green screen behind me. I'm truly outside, and hopefully our Wi-Fi signal holds up, and we can get a polished podcast to you. The thing that I'm really excited about is we've got a guy here, Hardell Moore, who just this past year was our USA National Coaches Developmental Coach of the Year. Just a special guy that has done it at all levels, high school, college, and now coaching. And Hardell, we are so excited to have you with us today, man.
Glad to be here, Mike. Well, Mike and Mike, right? It's a pleasure to be on here and just spread knowledge, actually talk about the sport and just kind of what the sport has given me, but more importantly, like what the sport has given these young men and women that we've all three on this call so far have had a pleasure to coach and watch them grow on the mat, and even more importantly, watch them grow off of the mat. So thank you guys for having me.
We certainly appreciate it, Hardell. Mike, good to see you again. We've been off the air for a little while. It's been a couple of weeks, so good to see you too, brother.
Well, between the World Studio headquarters in Kansas City, Missouri, and the World National headquarters here in Colorado Springs, Hardell, I'm trying to see if we can get more membership to follow the podcast. If you can't tell, we're working on the marketing side.
I got you.
We need as much help this week. No, it's good to be here, and I'm excited. Hardell, sometimes when you're working for a nonprofit, you can be a little limited in your resources. Mm-hmm. And I found a picture of you coaching an athlete years ago. And I tell you, I've used it on just about everything because it's the interaction and the facial expressions that you have with this athlete. I didn't recognize you when I first saw the picture. But then somebody was like, "Oh, that's Hardell Moore." And I said, "No, it's not." And they said, "Yeah, he's coaching." And I got caught up. And it was one of the coolest things just to see the way you were looking at this athlete. I'm like, there's something special in how this man coaches. So I'm super excited to hear more about that special little something today.
Awesome.
Well, awesome. I would echo that too, Mike. I've known Hardell back in his competition days and had a chance to kind of follow you through your career, Hardell. But you are truly one of the good guys in the sport. I mean, you are the guy that your approach to it is never demeaning. It's always uplifting. Mm-hmm. You're the guy that is, I've always seen that. Even when you competed, you were one of those good guys that, not that all of our guys aren't good guys in the sport, but some just sort of stand above others. And you've always reflected that image of a guy that approaches it the right way and builds spirits of other coaches and other wrestlers. And, to me, that's sort of being a coach's coach. And, you were that guy. So that's another reason when we had a chance to talk about who we'd like to have on the podcast, your name has come up several times and we definitely want to get you on. Could you speak to that a little bit about what your philosophy is and where that came from, that you're not that guy that's in somebody's butt all the time, that you're that guy that's more of an uplifting guy and trying to help move people along with the high spirit that you have?
Yeah, and Mike Clayton, I wonder if the photo you were talking about, if it was kind of me in an orange shirt and was I bending down and looking at a little kid? If you can find it, let me know. Just kind of brings me up. But Haggerty, you bring up a great point. Both of you guys do. Like, obviously the level that I've wrestled, where I wrestled at, and who I wrestled under, and it's funny the conversations me and Coach Smith have now from, athlete to growing and being a young man, and now I'm a grown adult, and obviously our conversations have changed. I look at wrestling as I love to have fun, right? I'm a extremely positive dude, on the mat, off the mat, and I want that to feed into my kids, and I want that to feed into my parents, right? And especially your parents that are just getting started in the sport that have the slightest idea. And with OWA, we got a lot of novice parents right now. So I'm teaching the parents and I'm teaching the kids. And I want them to have the best experience possible. I also want them to understand that this sport is tough. And it's going to teach the parents a lot about themselves. It's going to teach the kids a lot about themselves. But it's all about uplifting. There's two things we talk about in our room. It's attitude and effort. At this level, I'm not too concerned about their wins or losses. I'm concerned about their attitude and their effort. And if they have a great attitude, win, lose, or draw, if they give the great effort, like they say, effort is between you and you. I'm happy. You know, I am perfectly happy with that. And everything else will fall into place when they get older. You know, we go by.
Winning? I'm sorry. Do you call that winning?
I do call that winning. I will call that winning because this sport is tough, man. And, you know, we know it's humbling, you know, kind of like our 4 core values that we talk about in our room: positivity, integrity, humility, and hard work. And I want our kids to live by that. I want our coaches to live by that. And I want our parents to live by that as well. But, you know, Mike Clayton, like you were talking about, do I call that winning? Yes. Attitude and effort is winning. When they go do that, they're gonna win. We say win the majority of their matches, but they're gonna feel fine. They're gonna be able to hold their head high and walk off of that mat if they know they had a great attitude and they gave themselves great effort. And that's really all I look for in my kids when they're out there competing. And I tell my parents that constantly. Don't get tied up in the wins or losses. Don't worry about who you're wrestling at this level, because you start talking to all of these kids and everybody you got to coach different. They're going to spaz out, some of them, right? Why'd you tell me that? Man, just go wrestle and have fun, and we'll worry about all that other stuff down the line if you get the chance to, you know, you're still wrestling in high school or get a chance to go wrestle in college somewhere. Like, just go scrap, but keep that fun, loving, uplifting attitude, and that's what I try to pass on to my kids, my parents, and just the community, in all due respect.
You make it sound like not everybody's going to wrestle at the collegiate level.
No, they won't. We know that. I mean, that's just being honest, right? Like, you know, I've had kids that have done well in high school but didn't want to wrestle in college, right? I've seen kids that do well in the little league, and Eric can attest to this, that may not want to wrestle in junior high or high school. We see it all the time, right? So we just don't know what else that kid's doing or what else maybe that kid may be going through off of the mat, whatever the case may be. But I know I use this slogan a lot, that every kid should wrestle, whether it's a year, 2, 10 years, 25 years, however long everybody on this podcast has been into it, because it just teaches them so much. And I know, and I tell my kids, like, if you guys are lucky enough, if you guys and gals are lucky enough to go wrestle, get you a scholarship, go wrestle, get an education, great. But I also know I got kids in there that are good at baseball, they're good at football, but wrestling's going to make them better at those 2 sports that they're doing.
That's awesome.
And we also noticed Eric just joined us, Eric Guerrero. Eric, good to see you, brother. Always good to talk to you and have you on the podcast as well. Man, you look like the CEO doing some business today.
CEO of running around town chauffeuring people.
Yeah, as he's drinking his cup of coffee.
Yeah. Probably got some maca added to it. All kinds of good stuff.
That's awesome.
Eric, thanks for jumping on, man. I know you and Hardell have a special relationship, so you guys can lie about each other if you want to.
Well, me and Eric go way back, actually, from our college days at Oklahoma State. You know, and we weren't too far as locker mates. Like, I think there was Teague or Mark Smith might have been in between us as far as locker mates, if I recall. You know, I remember just Eric was a competitor to the highest level, and the dude wrestled his best at the highest level, right? Like, him and Dwight Henson used to go back and forth. Mm-hmm. I forget the 26-pounder from Wisconsin. God dog it. Dude was a beast as well. And I think there was one year that dude might have beat Eric in a duel by 1 or 2, but here comes quarterfinals, semifinals match. Mr. Guerrero went out there and got her done, you know, ends up becoming a national champion that year. So we've got a lot of great stories. Obviously, we're family with the Cowboys, right? And, you know, it's good to see him out there doing great things as well at the OKRTC.
You know, that brings up an interesting point. And I told you, Hardell, before we started, that sometimes we go off in some strange direction. But one thing that we haven't talked a lot about on this podcast is about those particular programs out there that are the breeding grounds, whether it's Oklahoma State or Iowa, that has generated some of the best coaches across the country. And certainly, you know, Oklahoma State speaks to that. When we go back to the era of Myron Roderick and Chesborough and those guys, and all the way up to the current, you know, where John's at. But you guys are part of that legacy. Can you guys speak to that a little bit? What are your thoughts on how that happens? It doesn't happen by accident.
Well, it doesn't happen by accident. You know, Mike, you bring up a great point. Like, Coach has a great legacy in college as far as his former athletes that are coaching now. But don't sleep on those coaches that are in that youth and junior high and even high school level, right? That are coaching, that have been mentored under coach. There's a lot of us out there. I put a post out this weekend. We were in at Tulsa, and it was, Munoz is there, Shane's there, Johnny Hendricks is there, I'm there. Like, Cowboys are everywhere, right? Coach has got a long legacy from college, high school, junior high, down to the youth. And I just think it's the fact of giving back. The good Lord blessed us to have this ability and experience these things, some at a higher level, some at a lower level, but also give those back to this next generation that are coming through. And what's cool for me to see now is, coaching for so long, some of my formers coming back and helping me, or some of my formers coming back and showing technique in the room, which I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I never thought that would happen. Or me coaching one of my former kids' kids. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's crazy to think about it. I'm 46. I should probably really be 75 in all due respect. You know what I'm saying? But that's just the joy of it. And you see those, and that, like I said, once again, Cowboys, we're everywhere. We're everywhere, and we're on every level. And, a lot of that has to do with the GOAT that kind of led us in that direction. And there you have it.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to our USA Wrestling National Coaches Council Heads Up podcast. And now a quick word from our sponsor, United States Marine Corps.
Searching for meaning in a relentless world, always connected, but somehow alone, trapped by illusion. We offer another path where the battle to belong begins. Awakened by a calling, united by the cause you fight for. No one can take away what it means to be among the few, the proud, the Marines.
Mike and Hardell and I, Mike Clayton, sorry, Hags, we had a little group chat going before this, and just really this morning, like, what do you guys want to talk about type thing. And one thing, as I was thinking about Hardell and preparing for this conversation, this dialogue today, what makes OWA different? And Hardell's a humble man. But the question really was, what's made Hardell's program different? And I guess that's a good segue. He's talking about legacies and a coaching degree and all those types of things. And the thing that stood out to me as I was thinking about him was just the longevity, how long he's been doing it, and him attesting that now coaching some of his former coaches, or wrestlers' kids. I think it gets taken for granted, programs like OWA, that have been doing this for 22 years, Hardell? 22?
23, baby, starting 23.
23. So, how I think if there's anything that I'd personally like to dialogue today, and we could talk about Oklahoma State and the coaching tree, and it's expansive. Nobody questions that. But you can't have longevity and you can't have long-lasting impact without a plan, without whether that be a business plan or the ability to look around corners and see things change. And one thing I'd love to hear Hardell talk about, because we face it in every aspect of our lives, whether it's business outside of wrestling, whatever, the change is inevitable. So how has OWA sustained that level of impact for 23 years? How did that happen? How has that happened?
Well, we've been extremely lucky. Don't get me wrong, right? So when I first started for 14 years, we had that was the Edmond Generals program, and that was right after high school. College, being a 22, 23-year-old kid coming from Oklahoma State. I got 10 kids. I'm trying to teach them a stance, sprawl, and motion, and they don't know nothing, right? I sucked. I was horrible my first 2 years, right? Because my mentality was different. But we were fortunate enough at that time to use UCO's wrestling room and Edmond North High School wrestling room. And then I did that for 14 years. And then when I got approached by a couple of guys that asked me about starting a academy in the state of Oklahoma, which hasn't been done before. And obviously we're in the Midwest. There's never been an academy here. So there was no blueprint. There was zero blueprint. So we're making mistakes and learning as we're going. Well, one thing led to another, and 8 years later, as far as with OWA, we're rocking and rolling. Now, 23 years later, I'm still coaching, right? But how did we get this process started? Kind of to what Eric was talking about. We formed a board, obviously, right? And it was just kind of wrestling dads and parents and some moms that wanted to help out. It's a nonprofit, 501c3. Everybody involved has a full-time job. We're volunteering our time to give back to these kids. One thing led to another. We started off in a Dollar General with 2 42 by 42 wrestling mats. And our membership started growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. Well, the problem was we were almost getting to the point we were outgrowing the space. Well, you have a little lull in athletes, right? So a lot of our kids that were in high school, they were fortunate enough to go off to college and different things like that. So we hit a little lull. We started doing some different fundraising events, so on and so forth. Well, one thing led to another. We ended up leaving that Dollar General space, which at that point in time was, 5,000, 7,000 square feet. But one of my dads found a screen printing shop in Oklahoma City that was 10,000 square foot building, all wide open. So obviously during that time, we had new board members. We started adding committees once we got settled. Obviously, social media is a big part of it right now, recognizing these young men and young women, what they're doing, and just kind of, I don't like saying I am the face, but I guess I am the face of it. But I got a truckload of people behind me that are doing a lot of work with behind the scenes. As far as our board members, I don't want to thank one of them. I want to thank all of them, right? They all know who they are. Our committees that we spread out, we're always asking our parents to volunteer. So they have a little bit of skin in the game, right? So they have a little bit of skin in the game where it's helping at the front desk, passing out T-shirts or whatever the case may be.
But you don't do it all.
I don't do it all. Listen, I do a lot, but I don't do it all. I don't do it all.
And is that by design, your design? Is that by design of OWA? And the Oklahoma Wrestling Academy? I just want to make sure our listeners know.
It just kind of happened, Mike, in all due respect, because at first I was doing a lot. Right? Kind of spread myself too thin, right? Don't want to let anybody down, spread myself too thin. Well, what happened is we start getting more people that, hey, Hardell, can I help you here? Hey, Hardell, can I help you here? Hey, Hardell, can I help you here? Well, then the board formed, right? And then about 4 years ago, that's when we start forming our committees to talk about, approach different parents. Hey, would you like to be a part of this committee, right? Would you like to be a part of this committee? Because I was answering emails, answering phone calls, and I mean phone calls about, hey, is this professional wrestling? And that, can you guys help me out with WWE? No, man, this ain't it. And I still do that, but not as much as I used to, right? So now my focus definitely can be on those kids and those parents and helping everybody get better in that sense, while I got our different committee people handling things behind the scenes. And it almost runs itself now, right? It almost runs itself now. So we probably got about, 140, 150 kids that are in our club, obviously split up. We got anywhere from 70 to 80 year-round annual members. And we just try to kind of keep it going in all due respect. And obviously, like Eric mentioned, like we do have to adapt. Social media has become a big thing. We did hire a managing director, like to kind of do a lot of the emails and different things like that one of our other parents was doing, volunteering her time, but she's got a full-time job, and that's a full-time job in itself. So being able to do like that and find good people that's going to be able to get stuff done when you ask them to has been tremendous for me. It's been tremendous for me. I can depend on my coaches. If I'm not at a tournament, this weekend I'm in Tulsa. I got kids wrestling in Lawton. I got some parents that are going down there, coaches going down there to coach those kids, right? Parents that got to run weigh-ins, like volunteering. They got skin in the game. Granted, their kids wrestle, but they got skin in the game. And they see the work that I pour in and the things we pour into these kids. And they're like, I want to give back that. I want to give that back as well. So it's all about that. Like I said, yeah, I'm the guy, whatever, but I couldn't do all of this without everybody that helps out. And that to me is phenomenal. That's what makes this thing run. That's what makes it run.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Hardell, but at some point you had to have the courage to go, and it does take courage. You go, I can't do it all. I need help.
Yes.
And and the courage you had to do that actually turned out to be a great thing to relinquish some of the, because I think sometimes in programs, whether at all levels, let's just say program at all levels, one of the things as coaches and as the coaches councils, I'm thinking how to help people that are maybe listening going, there is a time where you feel like you do it all, and maybe you want to do it all. And then there's come time to grow and you realize you can't. And at that point, at that juncture, I know I've been there.
Yeah, and you're right. And one of the things, like I said, if I'm still that high-spirited dude, Haggerty, you see me all the time, I'll whop you upside your head, be like, what's up, Haggerty, man? We always have a good conversation, so on and so forth. And for me to still be that same individual, to show Mike Haggerty the type of love that he deserves when I see him, that's what needed to happen, if that makes sense, right? And also for me to be the husband I want to be, the father I want to be, the coach I want to be, the person I wanted to be, I needed that help, right? And this is one thing that I tell a lot of the young coaches that are coming up now, as I'm talking like I'm an old man, but I'm not, but y'all know what I mean. Don't spread yourself too thin. Like, don't think you can do everything. And I think when I was around 25, 26, 27, 28, I kind of thought I was Superman, that I could do everything. But it took me a little while to understand. And the bigger the club and program got, obviously the more help I needed. And then when we started, coming into the OWA, the Oklahoma Wrestling Academy, and that thing just went from this to this, you're like, man, I need more than myself. I need more than 4 people. I mean, our board is 13, 14 people, right? And then you throw in the committees and stuff like there. Then you throw in parents, like I said, that are willing to help run weigh-ins, run the front desk. Hardell, go coach. Got it. Not a problem. But it did. I stepped up to the plate because I was like, man, it's affecting me. And I need to make sure I ask these other people for some help. And once I did, floodgates opened up and everybody was willing to help. Everybody was willing. A lot of trust, right? And I think we try to set that standard early, Mike, when they first walk in the door of structure, discipline, our core values, how we want our parents to act, right? Especially on a youth level. That's sometimes that can ruin these youth sports as a parent, but how we want them to act and hold themselves accountable, right? How I want my coaches to act, right? If I carry myself this way, I expect you as my coaches to carry yourself the same way. Now, you want to go in your truck and scream and holler and all that, you go right ahead and do that. But don't do this out here, right? We are mentoring these kids, and nobody's coming to this tournament to recruit your child right now. And let's keep that in mind, right? And I think, talking to these coaches that are out there, like, keep that in the back part of your mind. Go have them wrestle hard, attitude and effort, and the chips fall where they may, right? I told my son this weekend he lost a semi-match, an ultimate tiebreaker, right out, 0-0. He gets beat 1-0, 1 point goes on the board. Gave him a hug. Like, dude, you wrestled so awesome. Gave the other kid dab. Like, it was just a phenomenal match. Yeah, my son lost, but man, was it fun to watch and coach. It was awesome. I almost had more joy in that than winning some stuff that I won. It was just awesome, right? You want to see those kids go fight hard, right? And that's life. That's going to be life, right? You're going to get knocked down. You're going to get back up, and you got to keep going. That's what this sport teaches you. He learned some life lessons this weekend, which was great.
Hardell, I think that speaks to your successes, your ability to see the bigger picture in that 1 point loss in overtime. A lot of people have a really hard time seeing that. A lot of coaches, parents, and people out there that they struggle with that. And so I think this would be a good time to sort of segue into this question because, in the coaches education program, and Mike will certainly attest to this, that one of the questions that comes up a lot is, and one of the projects that we have in especially in the bronze, is identifying your coaching philosophy. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I guess I am. What would you say your overriding theme or your philosophy is within your club and your coaching style, and how would you best identify that and maybe share that with us and some of our coaches that are tuned in?
So my kind of philosophy is obviously and I'm going to say child because that's who I usually deal with, right? I'm dealing with majority of kids that are anywhere from K through 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Now, I do have some high schoolers that come in and they roll around and get their stuff. But I mean, like, at legitimate tournaments that I'm at Majority of the time, that's who I'm dealing with. So the big thing about that is just straight development with those kids, right? It's a big part of development and having fun with that whole process, right? Now, I got some kids that may wrestle a little bit different. You have your kids that you got to get fired up a little bit differently. You know, my son, you ready to go? Yep. Okay, let's go. Right. And that's pretty much kind of even my coaching style, right? Like I've learned the older they get, you kind of you're coaching them through the situations or trying to encourage them through the situations. Now, my novice ones, I'm coaching from that first whistle to the last whistle because they have the slightest idea. And I don't know how many coaches are out there deal with the novice, so it's a little bit different. Like I said, it's either don't lock your hands, half, double leg, and look away. That's pretty much the novice in a nutshell.
You could probably put that on a template and sell that. Right now.
You probably could, right?
For those young kids.
But I even noticed this weekend, Mike, that with my son, you know, earlier during his career, I was coaching almost the whole time. This weekend was a little bit different because he's starting to analyze things, right? He's starting to get a database for things. And we talked about that after one of his matches. He was like, Dad, I was thinking about doing this, but I wanted to let it go. I was like, son, you're registering now. You're remembering stuff. You're analyzing things now, right? You're thinking about kind of what you're doing out there. I want my kids to go wrestle hard for that. Listen, 4.5 minutes that they wrestle out here on the winter side and the 1.5, and have fun with it. Have fun with it. A lot of moving our hands, a lot of moving our feet. But it really boils down to those first two things I led with, attitude and effort. Like that's really what it boils down to. And that's really my big philosophy. But also, you mentioned this earlier, I kind of look at it at that 10,000 foot view, right? Like it's not now. They're not wrestling for now. And you're not winning a tournament now. And you know what I mean? Like this is for when you are 18, 21, 25, when you become an adult. Like I'm showing you this stuff for your life, not just right now. Don't get tied up in the right now, right? Don't get tied up in the right now. There's a big picture out there, and that's what I'm looking for. So I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but my philosophy is go attack, go fight, give me great attitude, great effort. Let's go try to put some points on the board and have a good time, ladies and gentlemen. That
sounds like a lot of what your parents are hearing from you is a lot of what your athletes are hearing from you.
Yeah, I hope so. I really, you know, we haven't had practice. We'll have practice this evening, but the group that went to this tournament in Tulsa, and even from what I heard from the group that went to the tournament in Lawton, I want to make sure I sit down and tell them that, right? I make my notes over the weekend, and I want them to know that that's what I seen, but also that's what I've heard. And that's a plus. That's a positive in the right direction. Now, we all know they're kids. They can slip back next week, right? They can go back down next week. But that's the beauty of it. That's where that humility has to come in, right? That's where that part has to come in. So, you know, you coaches out there, man, love these kids when they need to be loved. You know, if you got to kick them in the tail every once in a while, do that to them. It's going to be better for them, right?
That's the third time you've used the word love. And I want to use that for Eric, and I want to use it for Mike, and I want to hear from all three of you. We're starting to hear the word love more from coaches. Are we okay being more vulnerable as coaches now? And is COVID a reason? Why are we more vulnerable now in the last couple of years? I feel like I'm okay being more vulnerable.
I think this is just my opinion. I don't know what Eric and Mike may say, but I just think it opens you up more, if you want my personal opinion. And I think it's also, you know, for me, I have parents in my practice room. They are watching me on a regular basis, right? And I want them to know I'm an open book. Come talk to me, right? Come talk to me. You know, prime example, we had a little kid that lost his dad. It was in one of our little grapplers programs, and I knew nothing about this. Dad passed away, but the mother came up to me and told me the impact that we have made on that young man. He's 5 years old. And she's like, I've been tough on him at home, but to see you guys do it and discipline him and tell him, hey, can't's not a word, you can do this. She was like, brings tears to my eyes, right? So I think, and especially for me, like I said, I'm dealing with the youth. I'm dealing with a lot of development of kids, right? Come talk to me. I want to, like I said, I want to show them that I'm human just like you, and I don't mind being open and vulnerable about that at all myself.
You've been doing it 23 years, and the head of our coaches council, Zach Dominguez, I look at his MWC. He's been doing it for about 11. One thing that sticks out in my mind is the thing that you have in common with most coaches coaching out there right now that aren't at the, high school or collegiate level, the club coaching scene, is you do have you like to call it a full-time job, but you do have a responsibility, an employment responsibility outside of wrestling, just like Zach, just like probably 98% of the people running clubs have, a perspective from their employment outside of wrestling. What have you learned in your sector, in your employment sector, that you feel translates to your club? Because sometimes I think, as I talk to people, they think, well, I wish I could devote all my time to wrestling, right? And I often say, I'm not sure that'd make you a better coach. Are you, you know what I mean? Like they want to give up their day job and run a club full time, and it's like, you're forgetting all the valuable things. So what valuable things do you feel? Because this is where most coaches are. 98% are probably guys that have jobs and then go coach in the evening. So what have you learned from your employment sector that you feel well into running OWA, running the business, and that side of things? Managerial or just
I think the time management, the organization, being organized, right? I got to be organized throughout my day. I got to know where I'm going, my goals throughout the day. Like, what are my 2 or 3 goals that I got to get done that day, right? Like, those 3 things are important to me. And I think that has translated over into wrestling, right? I got my workout on my iPhone kind of printed out of what I want to cover that day, right? And what's cool about it is, I obviously put my little check marks by what I do get covered and an X by what I didn't. That way I can go back and review that. But I think those 2 things, the manager side of it, with my time, my organization, but also that allows me to give my full effort and energy to my kids and parents for that hour and a half that we're in that room, or a Thursday, 2.5 hours, whatever it may be, right? Because those kids feed off of that. Those kids can tell when you're just like, I don't want to get – well, when that happens, especially on that youth level, man, them jokers is everywhere and they all over. I ain't got time for that, right? I got 2 babies at the house. I got 2 kids at the house. I ain't got time for that. But when I go in there and I'm focused and I'm energized and I'm ready to go and I got my music going and I'm doing a little dance and having a little time, those kids feed off of that. And they want to replicate that. And the parents like, he wants to be here today. Yes, ma'am, I do. Yes, sir, I do. I want to be here today. But those organization skills have paid off tremendously from my work to the wrestling room. The goals that we talked about, right? I listen to a lot of motivational speaking and different things like that, but setting those goals throughout the day, what we want to get accomplished, and I ask my son, like, sometimes going to practice, just, hey man, what's 2 goals today you want to do? Or what did you do good today? What could you done better today? Right? And just, once again, develop them. And I tell my parents that too, ask them, right? You ain't got to go real into detail, but just ask them a simple question like that. What did you do good today, son? Or what'd you do good today, daughter, or Emery, or whatever the case may be? Oh, Dad, I did this good. Oh, I think I can do this better. Okay, hey, next practice, let's work on that. But that's for all those coaches out there that do have a full-time job, and then you go coach your club. Like, be organized and be ready to go, right? Be ready to go when you walk in that room. That way you have something to fall back on. If you forget it throughout the day, you can just look and see what it is. But those 2 things have helped me out tremendously, and especially with the size of club that I have. Like, I got to have that. Right? I got to have that. I got to have those other people also behind my back that are on the board that I can reach out to and conversate with when I need help, for sure.
Hardell, you brought up something that I think is so critical and maybe oftentimes even overlooked. And, Mike and Eric, both, if you feel you'd like to speak to this issue, but I certainly believe that the energy that the coach brings into the room might be the ultimate part of coaching. That if your energy is at a high level, and that doesn't always mean the raw energy, it's just like you mentioned the fact that people that look around know that you want to be in that room. And that permeates, I think, at all levels. I some of the coaches that I've always admired, and certainly John is one of them, but energy comes in different ways and different looks. But those guys that bring the energy, whether it's at the youth level, high school, college, international level, I think Bruce Burnett, Bruce, when he walked into the room, he was a guy that, to me, it was obvious that he wanted to be in the room. He wants to be there. And it just seems like that probably, of all the things that I've sort of dissected what you've had to say today, really stands out to me. And it's just like, I hadn't really thought about it that much, but looking back on the coaches that I've had, I had a high school coach that had never wrestled before. But his energy when he went into the room was just like crazy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, just here this past weekend, I was telling Mike earlier before we jumped on live that my college coach, Roger Dinker, who that Dinker Open is named at Central Missouri after, passed away. He was living down in Arkansas, but he just passed away this weekend. But
sorry to hear that.
When he was in the room, it was like, it was clear that he wanted to be there. He wasn't thinking about, hey, I've got other things on my plate. I got other things I've got to worry about. Things aren't going well at home. The energy is like dictating the practice plan, and driving that. I don't know if you want to speak to that, but that's an observation, I guess, on my part that I just think is so big and oftentimes overlooked.
I think, sorry for your loss on that, Mike, about your coach as well, brother. But to speak on the energy part, man, I mean, that's, like I said, if you know anybody that's been around me, Eric, you can definitely attest to this. Haggerty, I know I've been around you. Mike, Clayton, I haven't been around you as much, but I
got your number now, so you're in trouble.
Not a problem. But I am a high energy dude, right? I'm a high energy, positive mindset guy. I don't want to waste my energy, whether it's talking about somebody negative, thinking about somebody, just let's pour that energy somewhere else, right? Let's put that somewhere else. And when I go into that wrestling room, regardless of what type of day I had work-wise, I'm bringing it, right? I'm bringing it. And I want those kids to know, and I want those parents to know. And it's almost sometimes even, like you said, the parents, when they're sitting there watching you, right? Because they're observing as well. They're paying attention. But you got to be on that level. Some days you're going to have bad days, right? It's kind of like Coach would always tell us, you put them shoes on, you might have weighed in, back in the day, you might have been feeling a little bit sick, but you weighed in. I expect you to go out here and wrestle this match and do pretty good, right? You know what I'm saying? Like that was the motto. And it's just like this for me now. When I go into that room, regardless of what I had, somebody didn't buy a product, or my numbers weren't as good as what I wanted them to be, or whatever the case may be. I don't know. But when I go in that room, I got to be on point, because if I'm not on point, how can I expect my kids to practice and give me the effort that I'm expecting of them if the leader's dragging, if the leader's down and out, or if the leader's moping around or something like that? If that's the case, I need to call one of my other coaches and say, hey, man, you cover practice today. I'm not where I need to be. I'll see you tomorrow. But I
absolutely love that. I joke about that. And Mike and I have talked about this. I had a college professor one time talk about being in the 4 a.m. DJ. The 4 a.m. DJ, they may not feel it might not be all roses at 4 a.m., right, but when they're on the air, they've got to make it sound pretty darn good. Yeah. And otherwise somebody's going to change the dial pretty quick. So you better be on point when you jump on air. And that's always been sort of my motto, man. When you step into that room, you got to be that 4 a.m. DJ, and it's like, regardless of whether or not you feel 100%, you got to perform, and your kids feed off of that. And I've caught myself at times walking into the room, maybe not being on point at that particular time, and looking around, and I want to be critical of the athletes. I said, hey, maybe it's time I do a gut check here. Maybe I'm bringing the bad energy in here. So, again, I picked up on that as well with you, and always have appreciated that. And Eric, I know that you're that guy too. You're a high energy guy, and I've watched you in practices and stuff over the years, and maybe that's we're just speaking to the choir here with you two guys, but I do think it's important that even no matter what level you're at, that you do have that energy, whether or not it's a raw guy, but certainly that's you got to. People believe that you want to be there.
I'll speak on that, and as it refers to Hardell, that's what today's about. Yeah, I mean, there are days, but everything. I guess I say 3:00. That's when most people practice, but for the club situation, whatever, 5:00, 6:00, like whatever happened that day, like it's got to stop at 6:00. Or if you're coaching in the school scholastic level, it's got to stop at 3:00. I mean, everything else gets put down, and there's a lot of value in that. And obviously, I don't think you got to look far to where that came from. The quality of practice has to stay at a certain level. The quality of competition. I think coaches get tired too, and that often happens. Third day of the tournament or the fourth day if you're in fourth, fifth, sixth, if you're in Fargo or something like that, and we got to take those lessons. And
the 23rd day at Fargo,
the 23rd day, right? Yeah, whether you want to call that love, you just want to call it emotionally present, mentally present, physically present, grabbing your guys, shaking them out, rubbing their face, not just show up and running over to the hospitality room and having a bagel. Getting engaged in the tournament from Jump Street. I mean, those are lessons, and I'm glad Hardell brings them up because I don't care how long you've been coaching, you got to remember those things, and you catch yourself wanting to. And that's not important. The warm up's not important. No, the warm-up is important.
Yeah, it's important.
The warm up dictates the rest.
Yep. I think somebody out there needs to start this book, and it's going to be what are the things that we learn along the way. That everybody learns along the way, that if you read the book, you're already kind of there, right? I was 2 weeks into coaching at the apprentice school. It was my first head job, and I was about to pull my hair out. I was like, I don't know, this is coaching. This is not what I expected. There's bus schedules and this assistant AD and that AD and this and that, and everything's going on. And I was carrying that into the room for the first couple of weeks. And I realized, luckily we had like a door and a step. And I realized one day, as an athlete, what did I do to prepare for my matches before I stepped on the mat, right? Whether that was cleaning my shoes off, because psychologically to me, I was like, it's a clean slate, right? I'm going to get some traction, but it was a clean slate for me when those shoes were wiped off. And that was me on the mat. And now I can be me. What is that for our coaches? And every coach, hopefully listening to this podcast, knows what their pre-practice ritual is or their pre-competition ritual. I've had some people say every coach has to be at every weigh-in. But when I was coaching college, I didn't go to any weigh-ins. Your job as an athlete is to make weight. And if you're getting money from us, or if you're made that commitment to be a college athlete, making weight's your job. I'm out getting my workout in so I can be ready to be your coach on the corner. So what are those things and that get you ready for that practice? What are the, is it a breath? Is it a visual? Is it like swiping it to the right saying, get rid of it? Like, how do you get into that mindset?
I think for me, it's driving to the facility, right? Get in. When I get my daughter and son in the back or whichever one's going to practice that day or whatever day it is, just driving to the facility, going down the old gravel road, go up the hill and see that building. And I'm like, well, it's go time now. Go in there. I go grab my speaker. I try to put my Bluetooth on. I try to put music on before anybody comes into the room if I'm the first one there. Just whether it's just setting the tone. And we go from Chris Stapleton to a little bit of hip hop to a little bit of Al Green, Bill Withers. I throw it all in.
Ooh, good stuff.
A little Purple Rain, Prince. So, and that's just kind of when parents are coming in and checking in and things like that. And granted, don't get me wrong, none of these kids know who these old school cats are, but it puts me at ease and I like it. So that's why I do it. And then once practice starts, I kind of change the tone of the music and kind of pick it up a little bit. But for me, it's getting ready to go to practice. And that's all right, man, my day is done. Went home, saw the kids, saw the wife, got the kids in the back. Wife is doing her thing. we're off to practice, right? So like today, we have a little grapplers class starting. This is our second session. And these are for kids that are ages 4 to 6. Granted, that have never wrestled. They're not concerned about tournaments. It's just getting their feet wet. They go 1 day a week for 6 weeks. Well, there's going to be a lot of kids in there that have never done this before. That's my excitement for today, right? To see some of these kids figure out what a square stance is and what a sprawl is. We're probably only going to get to those 2 things today, but that's my excitement today, right? And then also talking to my kids that got a chance to wrestle this weekend and see them and just hug on them a little bit, see how they're doing, what are they doing for Thanksgiving, right? And all that good stuff. And this week's important also because it's a shorter week, right? Kids are going to be a little bit hyper today. I know that coming in. They didn't go to school. They out of school all week out here, okay? So they're going to be a little bit hyper, a little bit running around, but that's where I'm going to come in, set that tone. I know what this week is. I know you hadn't been at school all day, and we're going to get some energy out and have a good time while we do it, man.
It's so cool to hear a guy that's a 2-time NCAA All-American finalist in the NCAA championships talk about that, about just incorporating the fun and the environment of a sprawl and a squared stance to a bunch of kids that are coming in once a week. It's truly refreshing to hear that. I'm going to circle back to Mike, your comment on the book. I think it would be great to create a book like that, but I think only about 5% it would prove valuable to the coaches. 50% won't read it, and 45% of them aren't ready for the lessons yet. So it would be nice to have that template out there that says this is what you do, and these are the things that I've learned along the way. But, man, I don't think I'd have been ready for it when I first started coaching. There's just too many things that you got to get kicked upside the head to really figure it out. But and a lot of them have kicked me pretty hard, I believe, over the years. But
yeah, for sure.
Hardell, that's some amazing stuff. Every one of our listeners are going to take away some real value in some of this stuff. So these are gems.
I hope so, man.
Can I ask one last? I know we're starting to wind down. You talked about your 4 core values early on in there, the values of OWA: positivity, integrity, humility, and hard work. And I can see the positivity, right? That comes from time management, organization, and goals. You can go in, you can be ready to go, and you love the sport. And I can see that humility comes from attitude and effort. That equals win. So you can have that humility. And I know your hard work comes from all of this, and you've got your job and you've got your club. Where's the integrity come from?
Doing the right thing. Doing the right thing on that mat, off that mat.
Right? Where did that come from in your heart?
Oh, for me? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. No, you're right.
Listen, so my dad is a Vietnam vet, Army Reserves, retired Army Reserves. And my mom is a nurse. Well, I tell people this story all the time. When I went to college, I wasn't scared of Coach Smith. I wasn't scared of Coach Perry. I was scared of Mama Mo and Papa Mo, right? I didn't want Coach Smith to call them. He could have did whatever he wanted to me, but I knew if I got to them, I was going to be in bad shape, right? So doing the right thing and being a leader on the mat or off the mat came from them 2 people, right? And they established that in me and my other 2 brothers, Harvey and Howard, growing up. Now, I was the baby, so I took a lot of punishment from the older 2, but doing the right thing. And that's one thing they instilled in me at a young age. And that's one thing I want to instill into our kids that I coach, granted my kids as well, but I know we're talking about the coaching aspect of it. Doing the right thing at the tournament. Parents, do the right thing, right? Don't go out here acting no fool or whatever the case may be, right? Kids, if you find something laying down, go pick it up, take it to the head table. That's not yours. You know what I'm saying? Just those, that's where that comes into. And that's what we even talk about even at our room. You make a mess, clean it up. Like, don't leave my room just dirty, right? So just doing the right stuff when nobody's looking, right? Do the right thing when nobody's looking. So that's where it's come from for me, established for me when my parents still, raising me, should I say, and I'm just trying to instill that into this next generation, for sure. And, I got one of our kids that was at a tournament this weekend, not where I was at. He placed at a tournament, and the dad sent me a picture yesterday, and he was like, this little man's been wanting to talk to you for 24 hours, got his first medal, won his first tournament, and a novice, right? And he just wanted to say thanks. And that's that right there, that stuff right there, that's big. That's what it's. That's it. That is it, right? And the dad even told me, he goes, the kid that he wrestled was a better wrestler. He goes, but his effort won him that match. You know, his effort won him that match. But that integrity stuff started at a young age for me, and I just try to pay that forward to these little ones coming up now.
That's good stuff, Hardell. Hey, before we do wrap up here pretty quick, we're getting a little long in the tooth, but I would definitely ask, you know, it's nice to have a fellow Coaches Council member on the podcast, and Eric, you know, you brought such incredible value to the team, and inspired, I think, some of us old timers in there that's been around for a while. You brought some high energy and representing especially a lot of these developmental programs across the country, and have tremendous insight. Could you speak just real quickly about maybe some of the activity of the Coaches Council? I was trapped behind an accident here this last call and didn't get an opportunity to dial in, and maybe bring us up to date what the Coaches Council's doing and what some of the focus has been over the last several months.
I did talk to Zach Dominguez this morning for a length of time, and so I won't talk so much about that particular call, but you know, overall, you know, what are we trying to help accomplish right now? You know, what are our goals? One, I think for this podcast, is identifying what the Coaches Council is. You know, coaches, we are the second largest body in the USA Wrestling membership outside of athletes. I mean, there's 35,000 card coaches, and there's some overlap there, obviously, with the NCAA and the high school level. So there's even more coaches out there than the card carrying coaches. You know, one, we represent you. You know, we represent that body. That body's got a powerful voice, and hopefully through the solidarity amongst coaches, we can impact great change for the betterment for future generations of wrestling. So I think that's primary. That's for our first and foremost goal, is to positively impact the sport of wrestling for future generations through the influence of coaching. So we're always looking to do that. We're always looking to influence legislation to make wrestling a safer, more inclusive, more positive experience for all athletes. Two, we represent you, meaning if there's something that you're struggling with as a coach, maybe it's education. Well, we know where to direct you. We know where to direct you to Mike Clayton. He can get you any educational information you want. Maybe you're struggling with a particular issue in your region or state. While I get plenty of calls, and I can't guarantee that I can fix that issue for you, or that any of the Coaches Council members can fix that issue, I can guarantee you one thing: we're going to listen, we're going to empathize, and I learned this from Congressman Mark Wayne Mullen. We're going to love the person, love the call, to use your word, love, and we're going to take it to the people that we think can't fix your issue. And if it can't be fixed, well, then I guess it just can't be fixed. But we're committed to that. We're committed to that.
I love that. We want to hear people, right? Yeah.
We want to hear you.
That's right.
I think one of the greatest I experienced was being on the floor at Fargo this year, and they gave all the Coaches Council and just had to come up and going, why do we do this way? Why do we do this that way? Why? I mean, I had a notepad full of notes, just people just asking, and some answers I had, some I didn't, but I said, hey, I'll get you the answer on. And that's what we're about. We're here for you. We're on your team, and I think through that solidarity, we can really make an impactful voice for the coaches. So I know that's not specifically what we're up to, but maybe we needed to start with a general view so people understand what the Coaches Council does.
No, well said, Eric. Mike, anything to add before we kick off? Any other questions for Hardell or Eric? Man, this has been a great one. I appreciate you two guys jumping on with us.
Yeah, we're so lucky. We've got the Tour of America going on right now, so like Battle of the Bigfoot and all those. So for anybody looking for some great competition, those are going on. Clarissa Chun taking over the head thing. And to see Carver Hawkeye give her a standing ovation, and then to put her in a Kinnick football stadium, have them give her a standing ovation. How cool is that in a moment in our sport to see that kind of recognition and appreciation for that first big step for Division I, Power 5 wrestling. So I think that's awesome.
That's awesome.
And I would be so remiss if I didn't say thank you to Morgan State and the HBCU effort to get wrestling back in our historically black colleges and universities. Thank you, Morgan State, and thank you to everybody who made that happen to bring wrestling back. These are opportunities that can't just be for one conference or one segment of our population. So thank you for doing that and doing it right. And doggone it, if there's anything Morgan State needs, call me. I'll write a check. It won't be a big one because I don't have a lot, but I'll put my check behind it. So send them notes, send them letters, send them thank yous, right? We're the first sport to piss and moan when Stanford says they're going to drop wrestling. Are we the first sport that says thank you to a Morgan State for bringing it back? Let's reach out and let them know how much we appreciate them.
Well said, Mike.
Well said. Thank you.
Well, guys, I think we'll go ahead and sign off real quick. Before we do, I'd like to send my respect and my love to Coach Roger Dinker. Like I said, he'd passed away. He was very influential with myself and a lot of other coaches in the Midwest. His family is in great support. We're going to do a memorial celebration of life for him at Warrensburg here soon. So I send our love to him and the family. But for all the other coaches out there as well, we certainly appreciate you joining in with us. And it's been a great time talking to these two guys. Anytime you guys want to jump on a podcast with us, man, just let us know. We'd love to have you. And for our Heads Up podcast and all those other coaches out there that dialed in and even some fans maybe that we might have generated, we certainly appreciate it. We'll call it a day.